Coming up on the NESN Bruins podcast, we recap a relatively uneventful first day for the Bruins to free agency, and we look at who might be gaining on the black and gold in the Atlantic Division and the Eastern Conference. Play the music. Hey, welcome into the NESN.com Bruins podcast. I'm NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined as always by Logan Mullen. Logan, how are we?
Good, thanks, Mike. How about you?
I'm not bad. Ready to be done with this, though. Not to be way too frank.
Off to a great start.
We're here to discuss free agency trades. The league year opened yesterday, which was Monday, to a... let's just say it wasn't the NBA. Yeah, it was not.
No, it's a little bit
level.
Quieter, especially around these parts.
And since we are the NESN Bruins podcast, we will attack this mostly from a Bruins-centric focal point, which is to say there's not a whole lot to talk about. The noon came and went with not much really in regards to the Bruins whatsoever. It wasn't even like there was a ton in terms of coming or going. Marcus Johansson remains unsigned. I guess that's really the big one. Although I suppose Noel Acciari going to the Florida Panthers
not insignificant.
Relatively early on in the day. But I guess what would you say is the biggest thing that happened for the Bruins on the first day of free agency? Is it the signing of forward Brett Ritchie from the Dallas Stars?
Right. I guess it has to be that.
So, all right, let's just run through it real quick then. The Bruins signed Brett Ritchie, a big hulking forward from Dallas Stars, a guy who, what did he score, 16 goals a couple years ago?
Yeah, a few years back, but otherwise has mainly been like probably, I think, 4 to 6, 4 to 8 goal scorer most years.
Very much bottom six. They signed him to, what was it, 1 year, $1 million contract?
Yep.
They also signed forward Par Lindholm, who
he got 2 years.
Yes, and then 2
years, $850.
One way, yeah.
One way, yeah. Him and Ritchie were the only two one ways.
So $850. He's a guy with whom the Bruins should be somewhat familiar. He was with Toronto to start this past season, then ended up in Winnipeg, played a few playoff games with them. Again, depth guy, fourth line talent probably, nothing flashy. And then some other small stuff. I guess also, signing Connor Clifton to a contract extension, which will take effect not this upcoming season, but the season after. Right. I believe for $1 million a year. Yeah, it was a 3-year.
4 more years at Clifton.
Sure. Yep. So that's good. And they also signed Ryan Fitzgerald to a new contract. Also in there was Brendan Gaunce, a veteran forward, going to the AHL probably.
They got a third goalie.
They got the third goalie, which is something that Don Sweeney, I will say, held up to his end of his promises. He said they were going to add on July 1st, which they did. Right. He said they were going to add a winger, which they did. And he said they're going to add a goalie, and they did that and added Maxime
Lagacé.
Lagacé?
I think it's Lagacé.
Lagacé?
Yeah.
Lagacé. I've heard
Manny
Legacy
comes to the brain.
Former Springfield Falcons great Manny Legacy.
We're both familiar
with.
I
grew up watching Manny Legacy at the Springfield Civic Center. Well, they might have been the Mass Mutual by then even. Whatever. Nobody's here to hear us go back down Springfield Falcons.
Springfield Thunderbirds podcast.
That'd be awesome. I'm down for that. That'd probably be more interesting than talking about Brett Ritchie or Par Lindholm. But what are your thoughts? I don't really have a whole lot. You seem to be more into this than I am.
Yeah, I mean, more into that is kind of relative.
Well, you were pretty high on the Lindholm deal,
I thought the Lindholm signing...
Whatever. I mean, here we are.
So here's my thing. It was no secret that they were not going to be able to do much. It's like $10 million, a little more than $10 million to get their RFA signed in McAvoy, Carlo, and Heinen. I still have no clue how they're going to do that without moving some money out. So it's basically a holding pattern to see what happens there. So we knew that it was highly unlikely they would get Johansson back. The only way they'd start making notable additions is if there were trades.
Yeah, right.
With that in mind, I thought that it was as smart of an approach as they could have taken. So Lindholm's only been in the NHL for 1 year. So he went undrafted and then went to the Leafs and then moved to the Jets. Now he's 26 or 27 and has played in Sweden for a little while. and he showed some decent scoring ability there. And the same thing with Richie in that I don't think he's necessarily going to ever be a prolific scorer, but he did have a 16-goal season. I would say when we reflect on Brett Ritchie's career, however far down the road that ends up being,
that'll be the highlight.
That will probably end up being an anomaly more than anything. But I don't think we know entirely what Lindholm is going to be as an NHL player, for better or for worse. I do think he's a fourth liner, maybe a third line type guy in an absolute pinch. But with both of the guys that they put on one-way contracts, I feel like they signed skaters that have at least some sort of scoring upside, or at least something to look forward to. Now, that is a reach and a half.
Yeah.
You're basically clinging to, well, let's just hope that this pans out. But that is all that they could get. So I would much rather they at least roll the dice and try and do that than, take a true fourth liner who's going to give you maybe a goal a year. Like a Nolachari that's going to slash 110-11 every year. Lindholm, the season before he came to the NHL, in 49 games in Sweden, slash 18, 29, 47. Obviously a very different league, a very different level of competition, but there's some skill there. They really had minimal moves that they could make, so I don't blame them for trying to at least, give a whirl to two guys that have at least shown some sort of skill. Now, that said, I don't think you're going to be getting anything out of Richie. I think we will see a lot more of Par Lindholm than we will Brett Ritchie. But that's just a guess. I'm not overly encouraged by either or expecting huge things from either, but I can understand why they took the approach that they did.
Providence should be good again next year.
Providence should be good again next year. Yeah.
So that's something. Yeah, I think the only thing that really, the only interesting thing that could have come out of the first day of free agency is if the Bruins had gone out and made that trade to free up cap space, and then that at least would have signaled that something else was coming or imminent. That didn't happen. Not to say that it couldn't still happen. I thought it was interesting to kind of note that Sweeney said he thinks they're done, at least in terms of UFAs.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're in a rush to move any money out because they have somebody that they're targeting or think they can sign. So for better or worse in that regard, I don't think. I think we're at a point where a lot of the UFAs, especially the big name free agents, were all kind of ticketed for other places anyway. Mm-hmm. So they weren't going to be in anything like that. I don't think there's a whole lot out there that you can look at and be like, this is a guy we need to commit $4 to $6 million per year. That's going to help us. It's just that player is not out there. I don't think. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the only thing I'm kind of not disheartened by, but I think I'd like to see them do it, and maybe this is something that they would eventually. This is, the byproduct of clearing cap space. However they do it is just add a little more depth, but better than Brett Ritchie or Par Lindholm. Right. I think that,
But all those, I hate to, this is short-sighted, but all those guys are the same. All them, 850,000 to $1 million guys. It is very tough to find.
Yeah, no, I'm saying
they hit home runs last year as far as I'm concerned with Nordstrom and Wagner. The likelihood of that happening again is relatively low.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if there's I'm trying to find a list of free agents, see who's left. If you can somehow find
you've got a couple of those veteran guys like Vanek's still kicking around.
Right.
Justin Williams is still kicking around.
I
Your
guess,
guy Corey Perry got
that's
snagged by the Stars.
That's kind of my point too. Is that I guess there's not a whole lot of those guys out there.
Right,
anyway.
And I don't know about you, but I want nothing to do with guys who are in their late 30s and are probably going to get at least a few million if I had to guess. It's like I can see the benefit to a degree of bringing in Justin Williams, but what's he really going to do for you? Like all of those guys at a certain point, and not to minimize the career him or Vanek or whoever have had, but right now they're not giving you anything that will make you significantly better.
Sure. Yeah, there's not. I was just looking through it. It's like, you look at the contract that somebody like Brandon Tanev gets,
which is nuts. That was a ludicrous contract.
Even Wayne Simmons, after everything that he went through this past season, got a raise.
Million. Yeah.
He got a raise. Brett Connolly
that was a great deal for both sides. Nice 1-year deal with the Devils.
Mm-hmm. Devils team's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah,
like they've done a nice job.
That would be nice.
Moving some things around, and obviously getting PK Subban. I don't know if we've talked about that since.
I don't think we really have. I mean, that's for a while now, and we don't need to go too deep into it. But the objective for the Bruins has been, well, not the objective, but you feel a little bit better if the Bruins win the wild card, because then they get to play significantly less talented Metropolitan Division. Last year, 2 seasons ago, being the exception with the Washington Capitals winning. But now, I mean, the Devils will probably be good again. I talk about accelerating a rebuild. The Rangers added quite a bit. And as we spoke about before coming in here, I am very high on the Florida Panthers. I think that the Florida Panthers got a lot better. I don't think Brett Connolly got a fair shake in this town, and when used properly, he is a very good player and nice middle six winger. They already have a ton of talent up front with Huberdeau and Barkov and Trocheck and all those guys. And they added a little bit of depth in the back end, too. I thought Anton Stroman was a good signing. And then, Achari doesn't really move the needle all that much for me. But they got their goalie, too, in Bobrovsky. And, again, Roberto Luongo is a fine enough player, had a great career, but he was definitely on his way down. So I think Bobrovsky is a big upgrade. And last year, pretty much wire to wire, the Atlantic Division ended up being a 3-team race. I don't think it's going to be like that.
So that's the thing. You talk about getting in via the wild card and going to the Metro. That might be the Bruins' only choice this year. You look at them not doing a whole lot in day one of free agency is what it is. You can put the positive spin on it and say they did as well as they could.
Right.
But the most disappointing thing for the Bruins has to be how much better everybody else around them got. Mm-hmm. And that's, you talked about Florida. They got better. Even Montreal was making moves to try to get better. I don't know what the whole deal with the Sebastian Aho offer sheet was. I
feel like the Canadians did the Hurricanes a favor.
Yeah.
If they're willing to pay for
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think that was weird, but at least it showed maybe some sort of willingness to try to accelerate what they're doing. Tampa Bay didn't have to do anything. They're in an awesome position where they can just sit back and they're fine. In Toronto, I thought really did themselves well yesterday and have set themselves up to do even better. I think, trading Nazem Kadri to Colorado and getting Tyson Barrie back and Kerfoot, those are 2 legitimate players that are going to help them.
And they cleared out a ton of cap space between moving him and Nikita Zaitsev.
The Zaitsev trade, trading him to Ottawa. They also traded Connor Brown in that deal.
Right, yeah.
So they've got cap space now to re-sign Mitch Marner if that's what they're going to end up doing. So they're in a good spot. They don't have a whole lot of flexibility moving forward.
According to Cap Friendly, they have just over $11 million.
Right, so you're going to be right up against it, but you're going to have a hell of a team. It's going to be, when the season starts, or whatever Vegas rolls out their odds, the Lightning and the Maple Leafs are going to be the top 2 favorites to win the Stanley Cup, and those teams both play in the Atlantic Division. So it's going to be even more difficult for the Bruins than it was even this past season. Yeah. So that's a tough spot to be in.
You think we see any trades with regards to the Bruins?
Yeah, I think so.
Because they have to.
And Don Sweeney said,
go into this season.
Sweeney said Monday, he doesn't think. He thinks $10 million is enough. And I don't see how it is. And,
even if you get McAvoy for $7, you're not getting both Heinen and Carlo for
and I wonder how you prioritize the order in which you're going to do this. Because, do you set yourself up for being offshore sheeted if you go about doing this?
Because Carlo and Heinen, I think, are the only ones that are offer sheet eligible. So, I know McAvoy is.
But, if you get McAvoy, whatever, you sign him for $7.
Yeah.
Which, how does he come in anything below 7?
Right. I think 7 would be a bargain.
And does somebody, so then if you only have $3 million left and somebody comes and offers, I guess Dan Carlo Heinen would be the only 3.5 or something. Yeah. Or even if it's Heinen at 2.5, Is Carlo going to sign for 1.5? Like, it's just, you start doing the numbers in your head. I feel like something has to happen for them to free up a little bit more space.
And I don't know what it would be.
I don't either. And Sweeney says they've been taking calls on a lot of stuff. Like, he's been talking. He says nothing's imminent, and it doesn't sound like they're going to do a whole lot moving forward. But he talked about Backes, didn't as well.
He did, and they have Backes' list.
Yeah, that's right.
I got a kick out of that portion of the press conference where they asked, do you get a list for all the guys that have a no trade clause in some capacity? He said he does. So I'm just imagining what must Patrice Bergeron's list look like or whatever. Neither here nor there. Just got a kick out of that.
It's more interesting than anything else we've talked about.
There's true. All roads for me lead to them having to trade David Backes if they want to do anything.
Yeah, that's probably fair, right? Like, I don't see
and still take a step forward. Like, I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility that Krejci gets moved. For all I know, I think it would be stupid, but you can't rule anything out. But the only productive step is finding some way to move Backes. And I know we've talked about this plenty of times, but attaching some sort of sweeteners to saddling a team with 2 more years of David Backes at $6 million cap hit, it's kind of the only avenue that you have at this point.
Yeah, in hindsight too, it's not surprising that they didn't do anything in terms of trades on Monday, because now you just kind of sit and wait to see who loses musical chairs and then go from there. And maybe you find a team that's more desperate. But then again, it goes both ways, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just it's not easy. Like, that's the problem. You gotta figure out what your priority is and kind of still do. It's weird for a number that is so round and so basic as having $10 million. There's a lot of things you have to figure out before you can kind of attack all of your remaining responsibilities.
If you say for some reason, I think we would both agree that you have to keep McAvoy no matter what.
Yeah.
Say for some reason you had to choose between Carlo and Heinen, who would you choose?
If you had to choose between Carlo and Heinen, Carlo, because you've got, Carlo, because I think I think his ceiling's higher. Maybe the floor right now isn't, but I think it's harder to kind of find good defensemen right now. I think, especially, I keep going back and forth. That's a tough one, and I think just they have more depth. Sure, like none of that pool that we always talk about of like the young forwards, none of them are as complete a player as Dan Heinen is, but you've got a better chance of hitting on one of those guys moving forward to replace them than you do a young defenseman. Like, are you that high on like Vakainen coming up and giving you what Brandon Carlo gave you in the playoffs this year? I don't think so.
Well, and that's the thing is I feel like a lot of defensemen nowadays are puck movers.
That's what I'm saying. It's like he's kind of a rare, but like I don't know if that's good or bad. Like you know what I mean?
If his style of play in 5 years is going to be totally phased out of the game. Right. I would keep Heinen, and I know that he's become the most like maligned Bruin. For whatever reason, I probably get raked over the coals for suggesting they keep Heinen over Carlo. But if you have to choose between one of the two, I mean, I think that there is enough there in Heinen. First of all, we've said it once, we've said it 1,000 times. One of your better defending forwards, I think.
Well, you've said it 1,000 times.
Yes, I have. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. I just know that you agree.
I agree,
because I've never had a wrong opinion.
Because you've convinced me so much that I'm just, yes, I get it.
But after Bergeron and Nordstrom, he's probably your best defensive forward. The scoring is there. He needs to shoot more. His offensive missteps can be absolutely infuriating.
Yeah.
But he's got in 16, 31, 47 in 77 games 2 years ago. He had 11 goals and 23 assists this past year. Like, he can score. He's not totally. I mean, 16 goals 2 years ago. That's Brett Ritchie numbers right there. You can't find that anywhere else. But all joking aside, I think that it would be a mistake to let him go, and that some team's going to overpay for Carlo, I feel. And it's been well documented how I feel about him. I think that he is largely overrated, even though I did come around on him a little bit during the postseason.
He's awesome in the playoffs.
He was very good in the playoffs, and that he grew on me a little bit then, but I would still take Heinen.
Sure. The thing is, though, like if you're going to contend for the Stanley Cup again, this is all a moot point. You need to have both of them. Like,
right.
Find a way to make it happen. I'd like the thought exercise, but Jesus, like if you're not going to sign both of them, what are we even doing here?
And they have to make a trade. Like, that's what it comes down to. I mean, people are conveniently forgetting that this team was barely keeping its head above water through pretty much the Winter Classic. Like, they were just trying to get themselves to the trade deadline with essentially no production from their middle six, at least offensively. Marcus Johansson himself did not fix all of their issues. I mean, shoot, he didn't play in a vast majority of the regular season games he was around. But his mere existence and what it allowed Bruce Cassidy to do with other parts of the lineup wildly benefited the Bruins. Yep. And by not having him or not to sound crappy, but like a semi-competent winger that you can plug in on the second line, you are back to square one. You're back to the exact issue you had to expense two draft picks in order to get Marcus Johansson. So for them to not make a move and just leave up a competition for the second line right wing like they've done unsuccessfully the last 4 years, I think is borderline irresponsible.
What about Halak?
Yeah, we talked about this one.
What if 2.75?
Yeah.
I mean, you free up about $2 million trading him, and then just sliding.
You keep one of your RFAs not named McAvoy by doing that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get Manny Legacy in there as the backup. That's $2 million. I mean, like I said, he makes 2.75. But if I don't know. I don't want to sit here and start trading off the entire Bruins roster. But like even a move like that, even a move like John Moore, Kevin Miller, it's not like these are all.
Not trading John Moore.
But like these guys are all in the same ballpark.
GM Logan would never do that.
I know, but like if you get to $12.5 million, that's not even. I guess that probably gets it done, but you just keep coming back to Bacchus for better or worse.
Right.
It's got to be.
It's tough, and the one move that, and I wrote about this for NESN.com last week, was I would love to see them make a run at Jesse Puljujarvi, the winger from the Oilers, who he's an RFA right now. Him and his agent have basically said they're not playing for the Oilers. He's not going to play for the Oilers again. The Oilers have essentially no leverage. He was, I think, a 4th overall pick a few years ago. Talent just hasn't translated, but he's playing for a garbage Oilers team. And Elliot Friedman in 31 Thoughts had said that Boston could be a potential landing spot for him. So I don't know how much he knows with regards to what kind of interest they might have. But that is something I absolutely would entertain, because you can probably get him for relatively cheap on an RFA deal. Like, it wouldn't totally crunch your cap. The talent and the skill is there to where you could put him on the second line wing. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You swing and miss. But you get it through a trade. You probably don't have to give up a ton because the Oilers have no leverage whatsoever. Right. I think that's worth a look. That is one move I could see them reasonably making that I think would have a significant amount of upside.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just that's my take. That's the one guy I'd like to see.
You're adding more than I can, because I have not sat there and thought that one out very much. Because I just think, like, at the end of the day, like, not a whole lot's going to end up changing here. It's just, and that's for better or worse. But it's just, again, I keep coming back to this thing, but they're going to really, I mean, obviously they regret it, but they're really going to regret not winning the Stanley Cup this year, because it's going to be very hard, considering all the offseason change that is coming, paired with guys getting older, et cetera, paired with the difficulty of returning and going on another deep run after getting so close and falling short. It's going to be very hard to do that,
and
at least this year.
I would venture to say, I don't know how hot of a take this is, but I would probably argue that the Bruins are maybe the 7th, probably the 8th best team in the Eastern Conference.
That's a good point.
Now.
I wanted to do that before we go. I guess
right
you just
now,
did it right there.
In no particular order, ahead of the Bruins, with the way each respective roster stands right now, I would take the Lightning, the Leafs, the Panthers, the Capitals, the Islanders, the Rangers.
Yeah, like
maybe the Devils too.
I was giving you hell earlier about, you were down on them a little bit more than I was, and for various reasons. And I said, the Bruins just got to the Stanley Cup final. Like, are they really? Excuse me, is Florida like? So you're basically saying Florida is good enough to win the Stanley Cup right now, or this Florida team would have won the Stanley Cup last year, and like that also doesn't kind of take into account how the Bruins got lucky, for lack of a better term, on their way to the Stanley Cup final. So you have to consider that as well.
They played the garbage Hurricanes in the conference finals and a nearly blown up Blue Jackets team in the semifinal.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess if you look at like of the returning, this is not the greatest way of doing it, but like playoff teams this past season, Washington, they're probably not as good as the Islanders. So they're better than Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
still.
I would say they're better than Pittsburgh.
But like Tampa, Toronto, as you mentioned, Carolina. Did you say Carolina?
I did not.
So they're probably still better than Carolina. Columbus, obviously, better than Columbus. Montreal. Then you said Florida and the Rangers. So like, they're in a, they'll be in a dogfight for the, to get in the playoffs.
Well,
but if they get in, I still wouldn't be surprised if they go on a huge run. I just like getting into the playoffs is going to be much more difficult this year than it was last year. To your point,
if in some bizarre way the Canadians are actually able to land Aho, they become better than the Bruins. I mean, the Canadians narrowly missed the playoffs. If not for
I'm not going to let you say that Sebastian Aho puts them over. Like, so if one player puts them over the Bruins. I think that Bruins
with the way the roster stands right now, I would not rule it out.
Sure, there's a difference between. Now you're just. I've got you to come back and parse your words a little bit. Yeah, it'd be closer.
Well, okay. Do you want me to say with more conviction? If the Canadians land Sebastian Aho, they become better than the Bruins with the way each roster would stand.
Okay, I very much disagree with that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm trying to find. I can't find updated Stanley Cup odds after yesterday. It's all
it's probably
since
still
mid-June.
Lightning at the top.
Yeah, the Lightning. I mean, I like. So does anything happen day one of free agency that changes the Lightning being? I mean, are they still your favorite to win the Stanley Cup? 2020?
Yeah, I guess.
Me too.
So.
I don't think they didn't have to do anything, and like everybody's chasing them. I mean, this is a team that was literally like one of the greatest regular season teams of all time last year. I don't see, and they're not tired. They're not fatigued. Yeah. They didn't have a long playoff run. Played 4 games. They'll be ready to go, fresh, something to prove. Get in while you can on them.
Yeah. I'm so not encouraged by this Bruins team. Unless a big move comes in, I don't.
I am higher on them than you are just because, like, you get in and we've seen what Rask can do.
We have, yeah.
Maybe the problem is it just feels like every year they get into the playoffs now, it's like you're getting, a handful of crippling injuries, not in terms of like nobody's breaking a neck, and crippling to your team's ultimate chances. Like if you could, that's the biggest thing is like trying to figure out a way to fix Patrice Bergeron and make sure he's okay and making sure, they were playing, but everybody's banged up too. So like I don't know, I'm just trying to think of it as like this team was very good last year. And, like, they didn't look like that team really for the entire Stanley Cup final. And some of that's what the Blues did. But, I think if you can get in there and that first line plays like it can for 2 months straight, then you still have a chance.
Right.
But it's
maybe
much
that's
lower
clouding
chance
my
than
judgment a little bit. I just feel like.
But I get, like, you don't have Johansson anymore,
Right. They have to make a move because otherwise they were the team that was not that great in October, November, and December. They turned it around right at about the Winter Classic, that little win streak that they had that shortly predated the new year.
That being said, Charlie Coyle for a full season now.
Right, Charlie Coyle for a full season is big. That was another big problem that we were talking about for a while. Is they had no third line center. That was a revolving door.
And I mean, you look at the injuries and stuff. You'll have. I mean, I guess you can assume that you'll have Kevin Miller back. That's be careful with assuming health with Kevin Miller. It's not his fault. It's just
such his life.
Added up, yeah. I mean, they have good defensive depth if everybody's healthy. Still, like that was the thing is you don't look at that like the Stanley Cup final and be like this team didn't have enough it wasn't defense, which is
right.
crazy
Yeah,
to think
defense
about.
is not the problem. Yeah,
you're skating Steven Kampfer and Connor Clifton in the Stanley Cup final,
right.
Still, so.
And defense wasn't your problem.
Right. Yeah,
it's just absolutely nuts.
Pretty impressive.
I'll be interested to see what prospects kind of step up a little bit.
Yeah.
Seeing if Coleman can become
right. And
an
so
NHL
that's the other thing
mainstay.
too.
But last year they really, outside of Coleman and Clifton, didn't really have anybody that proved they belong at the NHL level, and that was a big change from the year before when McAvoy and Carlo and Heinen and DeBrusk all proved that they were NHL capable players. I wonder if they go back to that this year, where it's like we've got holes to fill and it's basically up to the young guys to take care of it. I don't know.
They're putting a lot of stock in like Anders Bjork. You know, like guys like that. Where if he looks anything like the player he was in college, sure.
Right.
Even
it's
he
just,
played
for so many of these guys, it's streakiness. Like, Stolarek had really good stretches. Bjork has had really good stretches. But when they're ghosts, they're ghosts. Like, you just don't see them at all.
Yeah.
And so, it's a matter of that. Sorry.
It's just if one of those guys takes that next step and becomes more consistent, it changes a lot. But that's a big if.
And it's a big ask, but I feel like it's not enough for at least these higher end guys to just be a bottom six forward. They have so many of those. It's up to somebody to prove that they can be on the Jake DeBrusk level where they can play a second line wing and be productive.
I don't even know.
That's a big ask.
It's like a weird,
so much easier in theory than practice.
Weird distinction too. I don't even think you need them to not. I think you can get away with them being bottom six as long as they're top 9.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah.
If you can find a third line winger in there, then you're in a better spot. But they've got some work to do. They obviously have work to do with the RFAs, so we'll kind of see how that plays out. I think you and I don't have a whole lot more to discuss.
No, we'll have an emergency podcast when Brandon Carlo's a Canadian.
Yeah, that's true. We'll keep our eye on it. I think we will reconvene at some point, but I think we are going on summer hiatus now.
Yeah, unless something goes
I don't know. There's
wild.
Nothing else to talk about. Maybe we can do some throwback stuff and get in here and discuss some more Springfield Falcons, some things. Maybe I love like the late 90s Bruins. We can come in here and chat about that if we want.
Yeah.
Maybe do a little Rob Tallis biopic.
Sure.
Podcast version.
Yeah. That's what everybody's going to be looking for on August 1st.
Yeah. Glenn Murray, retrospective.
We're not going to be doing anything
Joey
else.
Juneau. Yeah, exactly. That's something to keep in mind. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Stay tuned for that one.
Any other thoughts, Dakota? I keep doing this. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Takes because
I'm so, again, I almost called you Dakota, as in Dakota Randall, or one of our coworkers. I have more issues with him, so I'm just used to saying his name. So
whenever we disagree,
it's
that's what comes out.
Basically.
Yeah.
So, Logan, do you have anything else you want to say, discuss, any message you want to leave the folks with as you jaunt off to your palatial estates down the Cape for the summer?
I don't. Thank you for listening, for dealing with our takes.
Yep, thank you.
Level-headed and measured as they might be. It was a fun year.
It was,
we really picked up steam these last few months.
We got lucky. The Bruins played really well, so we had a podcast. We would be having this conversation 2 months ago. Yeah, exactly. So, it's been fun. We will, like I said, we'll play it by ear. I don't think anybody's really...
If you hear from us before, like, mid-September, that means hell on earth hath broken out.
Otherwise, we'll be back to preview the upcoming season at some point. Keep an eye out for that. And enjoy your summer, everybody.
All right.
It's been real. Goodbye.